This full moon in Gemini is the moment where everything you've been feeling underwater finally becomes an idea. It turns into actual language. We are just about ready to come up for air with all we've learned over a season of water trines. I'm Whitney Kranz. I'm your mystic sis, your astro bestie, and it's my God's given duty to translate the otherworldly wisdom of the cosmos into down-to-earth insights. This place, the House of Good Spirit, is the place where we come together to talk about our hopes, our dreams, our wishes for the future. And by examining the lunations, the full moons, and the new moons, we learn to grow in the direction of those dreams. Now, before we hop into it, right at the top here, I want to promote some exciting stuff I have coming up here in December. Now, December 11th and December 18th, that's 2 consecutive Thursday nights in December, I am leading a workshop with my best friends and colleagues, Alexandra Blair and Sarah Posh. We are previewing the year of astrology ahead of 2026. The workshop is called Fault Lines and New Frontiers, the Astrology of 2026, because you know what? Next year is major. But what makes this workshop special, we are cutting out the bullshit, the sensational bullshit you may hear on other channels, and distilling this down to what it takes on a month-by-month basis to thrive in 2026 on a personal level. I've got a link to all that, all the details you need to know in the description. Go check it out. And this is also a great reminder for other little housekeeping. You know that I do this so that I can be your astro bestie, so that we can meet over Zoom in the sacred setting that is a reading. Well, I'm excited that I'm evolving my offers in 2026. What that means is I have really just a few readings left in 2025. So if you have been considering a reading, the time to book is now. All right. Now that that is out of the way, let us get to this, shall I say, gorgeous full moon in Gemini. I'm excited about this one, guys. This is a benefic full moon. It feels good. The full moon in Gemini happens on Thursday, December 4th at 5:14 p.m. Now, the moon itself is in Venus's bound, hey, we like that, and in Mars's decan. Now, that's at the same time, obviously, that the sun in Sagittarius is co-present, both of those planets, Venus and Mars. But Venus is very newly in Sagittarius. She's only at 5 degrees. What's interesting is this kind of echoes the fact that our Gemini new moon in May was at 6 degrees Gemini. So Venus is basically opposite that point. Now, of course, we got to talk about the ruler, Mercury. Mercury rules Gemini. And Mercury is here averse in Scorpio. So Mercury is still sort of carrying these shadow truths of deep emotional content for us that he's been discovering and working through this whole retrograde and water trine journey. Now, leading into this full moon, the moon is going to oppose Mercury and then conjoin Uranus and then oppose Venus. And to me, it looks like this weaving together, this cat's cradle of facts that we have uncovered throughout that retrograde period and that we're now ready to weave into a story. Immediately following this lunation, Mercury re-enters the water trines. And really during the lunation itself, 22 degrees of Scorpio will call Mercury engaged in this water trine, absolutely, within that sort of 3-degree orb that we talk about. So Mercury is just about to trine Jupiter, trine Saturn, trine Neptune, and then oppose Uranus again. This all sounds a little familiar, right? Because we just did the same thing in retrograde motion in mid to late November. Now, the other thing I think is really interesting about this, with this Gemini full moon occurring at 13 degrees, you'll notice that the nodes are also exactly at 13 degrees, which means that this full moon is happening exactly square the nodes, or as we say, at the bending of the nodes. It's like there's a thread of destiny here, right? It's like, what we've got now, what's coming to fruition, these are tied to how we're evolving on our life path collectively and personally. And these are ideas with staying power too. You know, it's a Gemini moon, so I had to get all research driven and look up the stats and look up the numbers. Well, of course, this full moon is actually tied to a coordinating Gemini new moon at the exact same degree at 13 degrees on June 4th, 2027. We're looking a year and a half out, right? That's why I say what's coming up now, what we are creating right now, the story that we're weaving together from these water trines is one with staying power. I am going to get right into what this full moon means, and following that, like usual, we'll have our journal prompts, our integrations, and our Astro Style segment before we bring it all home. Now, before we talk about what it means, what do you think it means for you, folks? Where does Gemini fall in your chart? If you don't know, you can drop your rising sign. Do we have any brilliant Geminis out there? Please raise your hand, make yourself known in the chat. Now, as far as what this lunation is doing for us, what it all means, I mean, the first thing, it's literally just Gemini. It's Gemini's mythic signature. Gemini as curious, inspired, freaking smart as hell, fast as can be. How fast is Gemini? Well, we know Mercury rules Gemini, and the day that Mercury, my man Hermes, was born, he invented the lyre by noon, he stole Apollo's cattle, and he flew around the whole globe and back again in one day. Literally one day old. That's how fast the Gemini mind moves. Now, Gemini is also extremely relational, right? Gemini is about the exchange of dialogue, the exchange of ideas, the connection that you feel when in that brilliant exchange. And you know what? Gemini gets a bad rap. All the pop astrologers out there are talking about Gemini as two-faced. Literally, I don't know why Gemini gets a bad rap. Two-faced? That's bullshit. It's about being able to see both sides. Gemini is a pro at playing devil's advocate. Gemini is a little critical. We hear that one too. I mean, like a little mean girl. I mean, who isn't besides Pisces and maybe Sag too? But like the gossipy trope, I mean, tell me, let me see your algorithm and tell me that you don't like a little gossip, right? A little chaotic? Only if you think 100 open tabs and 40 unread texts are a little chaotic. Yeah, then maybe. All of this speaks to the mutability that is Gemini, right? Gemini is one of our mutable signs, which means it occurs as the seasons change. It's got 1 foot in spring and 1 foot in summer. These mutable seasons are the seasons where you get the wackiest weather, where you need to have all the layers on and be prepared with all the different outfits for whatever sort of manic behavior the weather wants to do that day. There is embedded in this mutability a sense of duality, right? Gemini is the twin archetype after all, right? And so what this tells me about this full moon and this twin archetype is that we are able to hold 2 truths. We are able to hold 2 stories. We are able to hold 2 versions of the self. And the tarot archetype, the tarot card represented by Gemini, is the Lovers, another symbol of duality. And in fact, the symbol of a union of 2 parts, right? And remember, we talked about Mars and Venus being involved in this full moon, being in a whole sign aspect opposed to this full moon. So there is that passion here that brings in the question of the Lovers. And when we think about the Lovers, we know that the Lovers are very different. They're very different people. They are not the same. But to create a relationship, to create a union, requires integration. So a lot of what I'm seeing with this full moon is all about integration. All of the myth that we have throughout all mythologies in history. I mean, I don't know all mythologies in history, so I can't attest that every single culture, every single mythology has twin myths, but a lot of them do. That's what I know. We've got Castor and Pollux, the namesake of the Gemini myth. We've got Apollo and Artemis. In Norse mythology, we've got Frey and Freya. We've got Isis and Osiris. And the list goes on of twin myths, right? So when we think about this duality and the twin myths that represent integration, like a lot of these twin myths are metaphors for companionship and duality and complementarity and relational wholeness. It's two distinct energies that complete one story. And what is so key in many of these myths is also the importance of choice, right? I think about choice when I think about the Lover's card in the tarot too, right? It's all intertwined. We can think of it like, let's take Castor and Pollux, for example, the namesake of the Gemini constellation. Now, one twin was mortal and one twin was immortal, the son of Zeus. Castor was mortal, but Pollux, his brother, his twin, was immortal, the son of Zeus. Yes, their mother got pregnant by both Zeus and her husband in the same evening, creating Castor and Pollux. Now, when the mortal Castor died, of course, in a fight over cattle or some shit that always happened in the ancient Greek myths, right? That was like the number one cause of death. Pollux was beside himself. Pollux felt as if he had lost himself, his other half. So Pollux petitioned Zeus to share his own immortality with Castor. And so what did Zeus do? Of course, when any protagonist in Greek myth asks to become immortal, they become a constellation in the sky. That's the origin story of the Gemini constellation. And the two brightest stars represented in the constellation are named Castor and Pollux, right? So that story itself illustrates that Pollux made the choice to end his earthly life in favor of the immortality of being suspended in the sky for eternity as a constellation along with his brother. So all of this Gemini mythology, Gemini archetype is asking us, how are we choosing connection and collaboration in perspective with what's coming forward, with what we're integrating? And it's also definitely giving busy, like 1,000 tabs open, but all weaving into a single narrative, which brings me to my last theme, right? Only 2 themes for Gemini, just 2, that duality. We're talking here about what happens when we move from water into air. And it is the integration moment that I've been talking about. So, the last lunation was our new moon in Scorpio, and it was an electric confrontation of shadow material, of our deepest, darkest, and really a revelation of what comes up from our depths when we are provoked. And this has all been happening amidst these water trines of this season. These water trines that have, I know in my life, led to deeply emotional downloads. And so what's happening now as we bring the water trines along with us into an air full moon is that these deep emotional downloads we're now surfacing with the Gemini full moon. We are translating that intuition into words. We're learning how to work with it. We're turning emotion into idea, into meaning, and taking very private truths public. And like I mentioned with my cat's cradle metaphor at the beginning, this full moon is working as a loom to weave these insights into idea and into language itself. And I can't help but think of this Gemini archetype of the storyteller, right? The storyteller has to take all of the context, right? And weave it into one beautiful storyline, making choices that resonate. I think this full moon is an invitation to cast yourself in this own myth. Become the protagonist of this myth. And remember that these ideas are sticky. They have staying power, right? This is long-term stuff we're working through. It's threaded with destiny. And at the end of the day, what I think is so cool is there's an elemental sequence at work here. Because remember, before water trines, we had air trines. So air trines moving into water trines to an air full moon into, it's Sag season, a fire new moon, right? So we're moving idea into emotion, into integration, and into action. That's the elemental sequence at work here. And the other thing I think is just really cool about what's happening as we move from air to water, a little air again to fire, is that throughout the back half of 2026, we will be steeped in fire trine energy. It's the go, 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 the blaze through it all, the burn for it all. This will become action oriented. So with that, what are we going to do with this, right? How are we going to integrate the integration? Well, I don't know. We're going to start with some journal prompts, of course. So let's talk about it then. What are we thinking? What insights from the last month or so, or even 6, right? From the last Gemini new moon in May, what insights feel ready to be spoken or written or shared or integrated into your worldview? And how are you ready to move forward with them? What two parts of yourself, the part that people see and the shadow self that you just met at the Scorpio new moon, which parts, what dual parts of your life are ready and asking to be woven together into a more honest whole? And how have the water trines deepened you emotionally? How have the water trines uncovered creative material? And what ideas are now surfacing from those depths that you could possibly take action on in the near future and in the distant future, right? Staying power here. So you definitely want to integrate this one by writing, by journaling, right? And that's the first integration. As always, you're going to write it down. But this is Gemini. So I also think you could speak it out, right? You could spend 10 minutes free writing the truths that have surfaced since the Scorpio new moon or in the last 6 months. But if you don't feel like writing, if your mind is moving too fast, like Gemini, then you're going to voice memo journal, right? Transcribe that shit. Your thoughts are brilliant right now. No editing needed, no censoring. Let the air element move through you. So what else? It's called phone a friend, people. Call somebody you trust. Remember, Gemini is relational and social and super freaking chatty. Call someone you trust and talk about what you've been processing. Lean on a friend. Let that Gemini work through the dialogue. And I also think it could be really fun in another way if you wrote yourself into a narrative, if you wrote your story. It doesn't have to be long. Write a 1-paragraph mythic version of the current chapter that you're in life. What is in your lore? Who are the twins within you? What are they trying to reconcile? What choices are you making moving forward? And then you want to follow the spark. This is a good full moon. We want to do what feels fun, what feels light and curious or mentally stimulating. Do it. Gemini opens doors through play. And I like to play with my fashion. So it is time for Astro Style. So, how are we going to incorporate all that is Gemini in our wardrobe? We're going to say shit with our style. I'm talking bold graphics, words, like wearing your heart on your sleeve. I want you to think about wearing a conversation piece. Whether literal or not, right? A conversation piece could very well be like, hey, I'm your Astro Bestie t-shirt. I'm going to make those. Who likes some Astro Arcana Astro Bestie merch? I don't know. That might be a thing, but I digress. The conversation piece, right? Make it a goal to wear something that invites a conversation. Hey, this full moon is in Venus's bound. What about a compliment? Wear something you feel fucking hot in that invites compliments and opens a conversation. Now, in terms of colors, we're going to lean on the colors of air, as Gemini is an air sign. So I'm talking blues and greens and gray, yes, but feel free to go bold. Gemini energy, Gemini style is bold. It's out there. It's experimental. None of this soft pastel bullshit, right? That was Taurus. Sorry, Tauruses. It's not actually bullshit. I'm just feeling a little sassy because we're talking Gemini today. What else are we talking? I mean, mutable versatility, right? Layers, zip ups, multiple cardigans, a base layer, a second layer, and a jacket, right? Like the jacket hoodie tee combo all together. Get ready, right? You want prints galore here. I'm thinking even mix prints, right? You want check, you want stripe, just make it fun. And if we're talking about duality, the sacred number 2, what about wearing 2 things? And I'm not talking about 2 socks or 2 earrings. Like, yeah, we all do that. What about 2 necklaces, 2 bracelets, 2 belts? Could even be fun. I don't know. The point is, experiment with something new with your style under this Gemini full moon. And just make sure you can move in it, right? Remember how fast Mercury is. So with that, this full moon is giving, is fully giving to us integration, curiosity, communication, duality, the holding of multiple ideas and information. It's giving creative generativity, and it's giving relationship to us. So follow your inspiration, start conversations, speak your truth. Remember, you are the protagonist in this myth now. And that is all going to set the stage for our fiery new moon in Sagittarius ahead. Now, if you loved this, you want to head on over to astroarcana.com, book a reading with me before my books close for 2025 and we start fresh in 2026. I would love nothing more than to meet you one-on-one. Have an amazing full moon in Gemini, and I'll see you on the flip side.